Good afternoon. Bwana asifiwe. How many of you know that it's fun to be a believer? Is it fun? Yeah. God does not call you to a community of drudgery and dullness and boringness. You know, so let's participate in the life of the church. We can make it fun. It's great to be in a community of faith where you can pray together and play together, worship together, and do life with one another, but in a real way. In a way that you don't have to watch your back because you're wondering what the next guy is going to do to you. Where you can gather in community and know that the person next to you, you have shared values, you know, and that they're watching out for you and for your welfare, that your success is a good thing. That's the kind of community that God calls us to. And God willing, in the days to come, we'll be having more fun days like that. We want to have family days when we can gather together as a larger community of faith from morning until afternoon or evening and eat together, have all kinds of games together, encourage our children as they see us playing together as their parents, as their uncles, as their aunties. Let's see them recite Bible verses and let's cheer them on so that they grow up with a community, a real community that they desire to be part of. We must role model that for them so that they know that the things of God and the things of faith are real and that they are desirable. And as they see the adults living out that faith, they will never want to be anything else but a believer, but a Christian. It's something to hold like a badge of honor to belong to a community like this. And it is what we are going to make it. We must be different from the world out there so that people looking from outside in, we may create what we can call a holy envy, that they will desire to be part of a community like this because what we do is beautiful and desirable and real and authentic and enduring and godly. Amen? That's my vision for you, in case you didn't know. When we started this church, that was my vision. That what I was seeing here happening in a clubhouse, I said this should be the house of God. And those children playing out there, they should not be watching their parents drinking alcohol and eating nyama choma as though that is what life is. They should come from a worship service and go out there and watch their parents playing and doing life the way it should be done and loving and being kind to them and being kind to each other. And God has brought it to pass and we bless him because of that. Now, I'm supposed to preach, right? I was thinking of the young adults and the dinner, yeah. And Maura said, don't waste those opportunities, eh? How else do you think we will bring up godly communities? So we do want you to meet with each other. And young people, ask for those numbers. Kama una tu mistari, uulize madenge. You know? Atakwambia, me I didn't date as a Christian. Lakini atakwambia, you know, I was checking out the book of Numbers and realized you're not listed. You know, can you give me your number? Kitu kama hiyo. Kuna tu mistari huko kwa Biblia pia. Unaona? Yeah, it's serious business. We must bring up godly communities because this church needs a future. Yeah? I was thinking about how do you know that somebody loves you? How do you know? Even in romantic love, not just general love. I think you know whether somebody loves you by what they are willing to sacrifice for you. What they are willing to give up because of you in order that you may be blessed. Somehow that factors in beyond the feelings, okay? Beyond the feelings. It's who, and I was thinking about maybe growing up as young kids. There's always like a stage where I think maybe at adolescence going into teenage, where every teenager is probably convinced that the parents don't love them, they don't, because everything, the parent looks like they are against everything, against their fashion, against their friends, against the, you know, their hangout and so on. And so the kid can come up with this concept that my parents really don't care. And then one day you grow up yourself and you become a parent and you realize that time what these children mean to you. That literally, you can lay down your life for your child's sake. If a gunman, a terrorist walked in to your home and said, I'm going to kill you, I can see a parent pleading, you take my life, let them go. I've lived my life, they haven't. Please, let my children go. Take me, do whatever you want. That's the kind of love that a parent usually has. That you're willing to give up your life for these children's sake. Then you look back at some of the things you thought about your parents when you were growing up, when you were a kid, because you were denied this or you were told you can't do that and the other. Then you realize what a small, narrow, and selfish mindset that was, because you didn't understand just what your parents were willing to sacrifice for you. And at that point, you know that your parents loved you and that they were willing to do almost anything to make you succeed. Some of our parents took us through school in ways that are unbelievable. And what they sacrificed, they themselves became diminished in terms of their resources, their stature, and maybe didn't end up being that much in terms of where they ascended into society. But every little resource that could have been for them to advance them, they gave up for you, that you could be greater than them. Then you know that they loved you. So you know somebody loves you by what they're willing to give up, what they're willing to sacrifice for your sake. So when we come here and sing songs about God, one of the things that settles our identity, settles who I am, is that I am loved. I'm loved because I know what Jesus did for me. So that settles my account. I have no beef with God. I don't fight him because at this time we are really doing badly financially, or at that time, somebody passed away in the family, we were in sorrow. Through the seasons of life, I know that I'm loved. I know that I belong. I know that I'm somebody and that God cares for me. Because I know what he was willing to sacrifice for me. And sometimes we need to go back to the very basics of Christianity to understand what should motivate us to do the things that God asks us to do. And I want us to ponder, because we are almost concluding the book of Hebrews. The big question here is, we've been able to see, we've sung the faithfulness of God. But what does that mean to me? What does that mean? I know what God has done for me. I know that he is good. I know he's kind. I know he's gracious. I know he paid the ultimate price for me. It leaves a pregnant question. What about me? What is God worth to me? If he was to ask me to sacrifice, what would I be willing to do for him, for the sake of the gospel? If this whole Christian thing is real, it can't just be a one-way traffic. It's always God doing this for me, do that for me, the other for me. Today I'm fired. God, you are not good. You're not my friend. You know how kids say, you're not my friend. Then the other instant, you're my best friend. God doesn't do that. Who am I to God? When it comes to my account and my walk with God, I told you my testimony, what God has done for me. What about me? What am I willing to lay down for the sake of the gospel? Supposing it really, really became very costly for me to stand here and preach the gospel, would I still be willing to stand and do what I need to do for his word to go out there because he says so? I want us to ponder about that, because God's faithfulness to you and I is settled. Your faithfulness to him, my faithfulness to him, that still remains a big question. What is he really, really worth to you? When push comes to shove, what are you willing to do in order to maintain the honor of God in your life, in your family life? When it is not fashionable to be a Christian when at your office, maybe you're the only believer? What is it really worth to you? When there is a promotion that is coming and it is available if you can take a few shortcuts, what is God really worth to you? Would you still maintain your stand, maintain your integrity? Would you look somebody in the eye and say, I won't do that? Why? Because I'm a believer. And there are things Jesus has told me I am not free to go or to do because I'm not my own. I was bought at a price. It was an expensive price. So no, thank you. I will not take your bribe. No, thank you. I will not compromise so that you promote me. I'm fine where I am. My God will provide for me. What is God really, really worth to you? The last part of chapter 11 speaks about the people that were willing to pay a high price for their faith in God, meaning God meant something to them. Abraham, go and sacrifice your only son. Yes, Lord, I will. Why? Because I think you're worth it. He didn't know how the outcome would be. He didn't know that Isaac would be spared. He had no idea. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, those guys, they had no idea that God would save them. They were told you'll be thrown into the lion's den, and they can see the lions. Daniel said, well, I'm sorry, but that's fine if that's what you find that you need to do. But my relationship with God, this is a non-negotiable. And when he was thrown in there, God shut the mouth of the lions. They were real lions. And it's not fun to spend a night with lions. First of all, they smell. And then they are not smiling at you. Because the very following day, when the king came and found, he was crying out, oh, Daniel, did your God, the God that you worship day and night, was he able to save you from the mouth of those lions? And he found him intact. Immediately he ordered everybody who was in the conspiracy to eliminate, to be thrown in with their families. The Bible records that before they landed, the lions crushed them, crushed their bones. So these were real lions, vicious and hungry. But this was a non-negotiable. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you don't worship this image of Nebuchadnezzar, the golden image, you know what? You will be thrown into this furnace, which has been ordered, fired up until it's 7 times as hot as normal. Even the guys who were stoking the stove were burnt and they were outside. You will be thrown inside. Their response? Oh, king, very respectful. We are not going to defend ourselves on this matter. Know for sure that the God that we serve is able to rescue us from this fire, which has just gutted your guys. But even if he does not, we still will not bow down and worship. Why? This relationship is a non-negotiable. Meanwhile, their families have been killed in Judah. Nebuchadnezzar has overpowered everybody else. These guys are refugees in a foreign country, in Babylon. So it's not that they're having a great time, but their relationship with God does not depend on circumstances. Disaster has come on their land. Now they are young men, teenagers, living in a foreign capital. But they're not going to negotiate that relationship. Why? Because God is worth everything to us. That's what they're saying. That's the kind of faith that God honors. Not a sometimes fair weather kind of friend. And not the nervous kind of Christianity. Does he love me? Does he love me not? Those things were settled 2,000 years ago on the cross of Christ. You have doubt about your worth? Look at the cross. Jesus looking back at you, saying, this is not me. I have done no sin. Even Pontius Pilate knows I am innocent. I'm dying for you. because I think you're worth it. So the question is asking, am I worth anything to you? Do I mean anything to you? Or do we have to negotiate every month, for example, when the offering basket is passing? Do I give you your 10%? Do I not? And God is like, it's not even yours. Why are you asking? These are basic questions, but this is basic Christianity. But we don't even need to call ourselves the name if we are not even willing to undergo a little discomfort for the sake of the name of Christ. So these ones who went before us, the Bible says from verse 36, some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned, they were sold into. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and in caves and in holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. So these ones who paid this horrible price, God kept them pending because he was thinking of us, so that together we may receive what was promised. We who have hardly paid any price for our faith, yet God was saying, hang on guys, I know you died. I know it was a painful death. I know it was ugly. I know it was horrible. I know you were terrified. But you know what? I have other flock. Wait for them first. Then together we can be perfected. You can receive what was promised. So for me, the word of God is a mirror. And when you read it, it reflects back. That's what James says. That when you read that perfect law of God, it reflects back on you. So when you look inside, what do you see? When you read about these people who paid these horrible prices for their faith, who do you see looking back at you? Are you a willing partner? Can you be enjoined with these names? Because God is no respecter of persons. He wants you reflected there as well. And I'm challenged. And I'm asking myself, am I worthy of this faith? Am I worthy of the price that was paid for me? When the most petty things upset me, like that kid who thinks, oh God, you don't care about me. The things we fuss about. Make a list of the things that you complain to God about, the things that make you conclude, he does not love me, and you even underline. There's an interesting word which, if you write in capital letters and without any spacing, can read two very different things. It can read, God is nowhere, or it can read, God is now here. The same word. God is nowhere, God is now here. The very same words, right? It's a matter of perspective. When certain circumstances come, some of us conclude God is nowhere. Instead of saying, God is now here. And prepare your heart for an amazing miracle that God is about to do. But he only works with a heart that can trust him, that believes he exists, that is not malicious, that is not harmful. He has not brought you this far to let you down or to abandon you. He has brought you here to bless you and to even make you greater. Until that mindset finally locks in, then you begin to see miracles rising from your midst and God doing some amazing things. I was thinking of two people. The other day we were doing, yesterday morning, in our church history class with Nawiri, which Madenge has had me teach for 3 weeks. He's very persuasive. I thought about a young girl, a real young girl. These are extracts from her diary, okay? So she writes a diary. This is about 150 AD. It's recorded by herself. And so part of history is that we are able to get some of this material. So this is what she writes. This is during the great persecution of Christians. That time it was not fashionable to be a Christian. While we were still under arrest, my father, out of love for me, was trying to persuade me and shake my resolution. So the father is a pagan, the girl has converted to Christianity. Father, said I, do you see this vase here, for example, or that water pot over there? Yes, I do, he said. And I told him, could it be called by any other name other than what it is? And he said, of course not. Well, so too, I cannot be called anything other than what I am, a Christian. At this, my father was so angered by the word Christian that he moved towards me as though he would pluck my eyes out. But he left it at that and departed, vanquished along with his diabolical arguments. During these few days, I was baptized, and I was inspired by the Spirit not to ask of any other favor after the water, but simply the perseverance of the flesh. A few days later, we were lodged into the prison, and I was terrified as I had never before been in such a dark hole. What a difficult time it was. With the crowd, the heat was stifling. Then there was the extortion of the soldiers. And to crown it all, I was tortured with worry for my baby there. So she's a young girl, but she's a single mom. She has a kid, and she's thinking about her baby. These were the trials I had to endure for many days. Then I got permission for my baby to stay with me in prison. At once, I recovered my health, relieved as I was of my worry and anxiety over the child. My prison had suddenly become a palace, so that I wanted to be there rather than anywhere else. One day, while we were eating breakfast, we were suddenly hurried off for a hearing. We arrived at the forum, and straight away, the story went about the neighborhood near the forum, and a huge crowd gathered. We walked up the prison's dock. All the others, when questioned, admitted their guilt. Guilty of being a Christian, okay? Then, when it came to my turn, my father appeared with my son, dragged me from the step and said, perform the sacrifice, have pity on your baby. Hyrcanus, the governor, who had received his judicial powers as the successor of the late proconsul Minicus, said to me, have pity on your father's gray head. Have pity on your infant son. Offer the sacrifice for the welfare of the emperors. The emperors then would declare themselves as gods. Emperor Domitian took the title Master and God and demanded that everybody would put a pinch of incense into the fire and, for the welfare in worship of him as God. I will not, I retorted. Are you a Christian? Asked the governor. And I said, yes, I am. Then Hyrcanus passed sentence on all of us. We were condemned to the beasts, and we returned to prison in high spirits. So this is the early account of martyrdom among the believers. This is a young girl. She had a baby. In fact, she writes at the end, but my baby had got used to being nursed at the breast and to staying with me in prison. So I sent the deacon Promenius straight away to my father to ask for the baby. But father refused to give him over. But as God willed, the baby had no further desire for the breast, nor did I suffer any inflammation. And so I was relieved of any anxiety for my child and of any discomfort in my breasts. That's how she sees God's grace in that particular instance. And she goes, they were condemned to the beasts. They would be thrown into the arena and the lions would be released. And the Roman public would celebrate as they saw them being torn to pieces, screaming and crying. That was her end. That's how she died. This young girl, Perpetua. Obviously, God meant something to her. Even her own baby, she was willing to leave behind for the sake of the name of Christ. These were not comfortable times, okay? It's not like today, even being a Christian, it's like you can add it to your CV and people can say, wow, finally a man who can be trusted. If you're an elder, you are surely getting the job, But if you converted to Christianity, in all possibility, within 10 years, you will be dead. Because the persecutions were widespread, they were systematic, and they were throughout the Roman Empire. For the first 300 years of Christianity, it was not a joke to be called a Christian. It was not fashionable. If you have any title of any kind, under one of the emperors, he said, target the leaders. And they were all, in about a few months, all the major bishops of the major towns, Jerusalem, Antioch, Alexandria, Carthage, were all martyred. They were all decapitated. So by the time you're saying that I'm a Christian, you're saying I'm willing to lay down my life for the sake of Christ. Listen to this. This is during Emperor Nero's reign. Around this time, this is when Paul, the apostle, was killed. Because this is written probably around 64 AD. The last letter we have from Paul is around 60 AD. The end of the book of Acts, it ends with him in Rome, in prison, preaching continually for 2 years as different people come to him and he would preach to them. And then everything goes silent. And that's the reign of Nero. And Nero just made sport. Listen to this. A fire has started somewhere in Rome, and then it is rumored that, Nero himself has started the fire because he wanted to redevelop a part of it. But he blamed it on the Christians. He says this, to kill the rumors about the fire that he had started, Nero charged and tortured some people hated for their evil practices. This is the view of people, that's how they looked at Christians in those days, okay? People hated for their evil practices. The group popularly known as Christians, okay? So they were known, they were reputed to be evil. Why were they evil? When they took the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, the table, they were called cannibals. You understand? People say they must be cannibals. Because they loved each other and fellowshiped together with men and women, they were called immoral. Because they refused to sacrifice to the Roman deities, they were called atheists. So they were called an evil people, all right? The group popularly known as Christians, the founder of this sect, Christ, had been put to death by the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. So this is a record by Tacitus, around 150 AD. No, around 64 AD. Had been put to death by the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, when Tiberius was emperor. Their deadly superstition had been suppressed temporarily, but was beginning to spring up again. Now, and not just now in Judea, but even in Rome itself, where all kinds of sordid and shameful activities are attracted and catch on. First, those who confessed to being Christians were arrested. Then on information obtained from them, hundreds were convicted, more for their antisocial beliefs than for fire-raising. In their deaths, they were made a mockery. They were covered in the skins of wild animals, torn to death by dogs, crucified or set on fire, so that when darkness fell, they burned like torches in the night. Nero opened up his own gardens for this spectacle and gave a show in the arena where he mixed with a crowd or stood dressed as a charioteer on a chariot. As a result, although they were guilty of being Christians and deserved death, people began to feel sorry for them, for they realized that they were being massacred not for the public good, but to satisfy one man's mania. This is the nature, this is the life that the Christians lived. And it caused me to really, really reflect on the times that they lived and the faithfulness that they displayed in circumstances that were simply impossible. And I still wonder, why am I even called a believer? Why am I a Christian when in comparison I have paid no price for the faith that I bear? And all I hear among my fellow believers is the benefits of being a Christian and the complaints about what God has not provided as yet. These guys expected zero. They actually expected to die in the course of the faith, but they still said it's worth it. This relationship is non-negotiable. What is God worth to you? What is he worth to you? What is your relationship with him worth? Is it worth your job? Your family? If push came to shove, what would you be willing to lay on the table for the sake of Christ? He has laid his. He's told you what you're worth, what he's willing to give up for you. What are you willing to give up for him? Basic Christianity, no theology, just a relationship. If you want to know that somebody loves you, look at what they're willing to give up for your sake. That settles all accounts. There is no debate. Here then, he continues in chapter 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, all these guys who have gone before us, those who laid their lives for the sake of the gospel, those who suffered, and those who endured much pain for the sake of it, let us throw off everything that hinders and sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. There is a race. And he uses the metaphor of an athlete who sets aside everything, eats certain kinds of food, trains every day, builds up muscles, because there's a goal and there's an objective. There's something that he must win at the end of the race. And he doesn't just sit around. He's on a schedule, or she's on a schedule, and they're saying, hey, look, there's this competition that is coming. Like our team, when they knew there's a competition that was coming, every Monday they were here, and Wednesday, and they were practicing. He says, we have a race. It's a spiritual race. It's no less a fight than any other. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. He's saying we have a model. We are not being left to figure it out on our own. There is a faith model right there, Jesus Christ, the author and the finisher of our faith. So we set our eyes on him, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He's saying this, look guys, this, you're not being asked to invent anything. He's saying this is the deal. Look at me. Look at what I was able to endure. He endured the cross, scorning its shame. Jesus hung on the cross naked. The cloth we put on him there, it's just for us. It was supposed to expose him to maximum ridicule and scorn and shame. When it says he bore our shame on the cross, that's what it means. Exposed naked in public, beaten, worn out, looking at him, literally, there was nothing desirable to him. People spat at him. But he's there hanging on the cross and saying, this is not for me. This is for you. I've done no wrong. I've not sinned. Even Pontius Pilate, a pagan, knows I've done no wrong. He said it 3 times. This is your shame that I'm wearing, that I bear. So he has never asked you to go where he himself has not gone. He has been the perfect model and example of what it means to pay a price for people that you love. So he's saying, am I worth to you? This is what I'm willing to endure. But then we are giving another model. We are saying, this is not for nothing. For the joy that was set before him, the Father knew that the Son loved him by what he was willing to endure. And after the cross, he was raised up to the place above all other places. He was given the name that is above every name in heaven, on earth, and under the earth. There is no name greater than the name of Jesus, because of what he was willing to endure. And the Father lifted him up to the highest place. And he says, this is the deal. This is how I want you to deal with life. What are you willing to endure for me? Look at what I endured for you, and look at what the Father has done for me. He's now seated on the right hand of the throne of God, the place of power. He has promised us the same thing. Run the race with endurance, and I will give you the crown of life that does not fade away. I'm not telling you that this is all for nothing. What lies on the other side, you have no imagination what I'll prepare for you. But I need you to be faithful and to endure for me, just like I endured for you.